Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the last day of Build. Hope you had a good time so far on the conference. And welcome to the HoloLens Overflow Room, right? No? No, we're going to talk about navigation and windowing in this room. So before we get started, we asked to show that you can win prizes and stuff for submitting evaluations of our breakout sessions. So go ahead and do that. And navigation and windowing fits into a part of our platform or our company called the application model. And the application model is basically the core components and interfaces, services that you come to expect for our universal platform. It's things like how you get installed toasts, tiles, how you launch applications, or how other applications launch you. And right now you're here. I have a big box over there. It doesn't mean I'm important. It just means that I have a lot of stuff no one else wants, right? So this is the parts for windowing, for transitioning navigation state inside your application, suspending, resuming, all the events that come with that. So I've said navigation model here a couple of times, and I'm going to start with just trying to give a quick overview of what we mean when we say navigation model. It is not about navigating a map. It's not about GPS systems. It's not about how to find your way. Well, it is about how to find your way, but it's inside an app. Things like how the user launches and dismisses you, what happens to your app while that is going on, and what you do to the user as with your content in those situations. It's transitioning between pages inside your application. And now it's also about displaying new views of an application. And of course, how the user ends up moving between all these components. So you could say that navigation model is the cornerstone of the user experience. Sure, the user experience is a lot about graphics and controls and all that fluffy stuff, but underneath, if you don't have a proper navigation model throughout, the goodness of the UI may not be the thing that draws the user back into your application. With Windows 10, we set out with a couple of goals for what we wanted the navigation model to be and to enable. First off, we wanted to enable the user to feel at home and know its way whenever they pick up a Windows 10 device. So regardless if they pick up a phone or an Xbox or even put on a HoloLens, the way they work with the apps should be intuitive. In order to do so, we of course wanted to enable you, the developers, to make this happen. For you to do that, we need to unify our developer experience across all these devices. So that's why we set out with the universal platform that you probably heard over and over and over again throughout the conference. What this means is basically we're trying to minimize the difference in API surfaces that you have to adapt to across the devices, while still giving you the possibility to customize for the form factor. For instance, HoloLens would be kind of boring if you couldn't take advantage of the 3D holographic display, right? And Xbox, well, you have the Kinect. You can do other ways of interacting with your application. So we would still want you to be able to use all these technologies inside your apps, but the core should still be the same across the across the device family. So that's a little bit about the background. You probably saw the keynote from Treadwell, and Windows is now Windows again. We are now bringing back the desktop experience, the windowed applications, the place where you can have all this goodness. Basically, you can have overlapping windows, you can have freely resizable windows, and they can even be slightly outside of the actual display area. Now, this is the user doing things to your application. So, resizing, maximizing, minimizing, and you have to adapt to that. And that's, of course, all goodness for the user, right? But we want to give you something as well, not only the tax of having to adapt to a free-flowing application use. So we're introducing a couple of new things to the Universal platform, which, if you come from a Win32 world, you probably take for granted. You can now do things like setting your preferred views on launch. I will show you in a minute how this is done. But you can actually dictate what the size of your application will be when it hits the screen. You can do things like launching into full screen mode. And this is not the same as maximized. It's about removing all the system overlays from the display. Like if you want to launch directly into playing a video. You can also do things like specifying minimum view size, basically limiting how small the users can make your application when it's running. And this is, of course, for you to be able to guarantee that content will show properly inside your app. And then you can also do changes at runtime to your view. And you might go, yeah, it could be a pretty jarring user experience. You can resize your view all the time, right? That's not really the use case here. The use case is, of course, things like in a chat client where you open up a new window. You want that to come up a different size. Or if you start a video player without any content, you might start it small, and then the user opens a video. You want it to resize to the actual video content and not having the user do all that manually. So let's take a quick look at what that looks like. I had the wrong thing open, of course. I'm just going to start a little application here. And it's a pretty simple application, so you will see that there is no smoke and mirrors, right? The fancier it is, the more guaranteed it's a slideshow. So, for instance, when you want to resize your windows, you can see my current size there. I will just, here we go. This is pretty much everything you have to do. It's too small of a size, so bring it up a little bit. It's basically one line of code. You try to set resize the view to new size. Set a new width and height, and hopefully my little app is now 500 by 500. So it's really simple to do these things. And you will see this throughout the APIs. So resizing, setting the minimum size. I think the actual minimum size is something around 500 by 320 right now. And since I set it at 500, 500, let's say we actually don't want the user to go lower. Again, it's a one-line API, so pretty straightforward. We set a new windowing minimum size, and hopefully, I can now not go further down. And this is, you see the set preferred, it's try, set some things, and this is of course all because When the user runs your application, they may run it also in something that is called immersive mode, which is pretty much phones, Xbox, PPIs, where the user do not have multiple windows that they can resize freely. And we need to take that into account when we design our apps. So the immersive mode is converged on the 8.1 model, where you have limited sizing options. Things like full screen, there's only one app running, such as a phone. Or in tablet mode, where you have 50-50 splits. Or like on Xbox, where you have Snap. Of course, you have Snap in tablet mode as well. But these are all user-initiated resizing. It means that the user is in control when this happens. It's in reaction to something. So even if you do set all these nice, cool new features for your desktop mode, they will not be honored in this mode. We will basically no op. So that's why we have the try and preferred. So you need to always keep that in mind, that the user may actually interact with your app on a non-resizable SKU. But you will always, whenever you launch into a size or when something happens, you will get change in sizes. So basically, this is the event that will tell you to redraw. Regardless if it's you doing the resizing or if it's the user that initiated it, the same event is fired. So there is no extra logic needed for the try resize or set min size. It's basically, once you do it, you will kick in to your size change event handler and redraw to whatever the size came out to be for your application in regards to that event. So that is your cue to do this. Now, working with one window is something, if you come from phone or from Xbox developers, it's probably something you're pretty familiar with. It's the standard way of working with the Windows 8.1 applications. But on desktop, you had the ability to create new windows and new views of your application. They were done for things like mail, where you have a standard inbox view and you open a new email compose and you do that in a new window. For Windows 10, we took that API surface from 8.1 and we made it available across the device families. So it's more or less a drag and drop. If you have multiple windows today in your application, it's a drag and drop situation for bringing that up to a Windows 10 application. There is no new fancy way that you have to adapt to in order to create new windows on Windows 10. There is one caveat. The activation of each window needs to be done for secondary views, something that you didn't have to do in 8.1. The APIs are the same for windowed and immersive mode. So options for stating that I want to be in a snap mode or I want to be 50-50 will only be honored on devices that run in that mode. So if you're in tablet mode on a PC, you're on an Xbox, your application will snap into these, or try to snap into these preferred views. While on desktop, they will show up as free-floating windows if you're in the windowed desktop mode. And you will have to then set your sizes according to what you would like to see in that kind of mode. Like I said, available across the SKUs. So This is something that might be, I don't know about you, but I'm excited because it means that on phone now, we give you the ability to do what only Inboxed app could do before. Like the mail and messaging client that opened up new views for your conversations. This is now open to you as developers on even the mobile platform. And I want to give you just a quick view of what that looks like. And hopefully, I have all the components running here. That's the wrong one, sorry. It's not showing up on my screen, so it's somewhere else. Nope. That's weird. Okay, I'm going to do like this, and I have prepared it so it's actually deployed to my phone. If it wants to connect, this is the demos, what happens, right? Here we go. So we built a small chat app on my phone. Has a couple of contacts, a couple of conversations down here, and I can now tap on a conversation, go into it, and in my backstack, I now have multiple views. So you can now give your apps these capabilities. And of course, thank you. And of course, you can switch between them. You can open more than just one. You can close individual chats and move between them. And I'm super excited that this is now available to phone as well. And the application surface is pretty straightforward. It's you create new views for, let's see if I get the pointer running. It didn't really work. So you create new views, and then you either switch to them or show them as standalone. And on phone, given that you only have one view visible at any time, all these fancy options for saying snap or saying 50-50, etc., they will unfortunately not be honored as it is right now. We'll see if tablets or bigger devices comes, and then of course that will just naturally come in. But talking about multiple views, there is also another scenario that this unlocks. And it is about activating views on launch. So when the user taps on a file, you can open a new view to show that file instead of reusing the same instance over and over, like a photos viewer, for instance. And you might say, well, that was available in 8.1 as well. And yes, it was. What we're doing now, though, is switching computers. If you remember on 8.1, whenever you activated an app, you've probably seen this on photos. If you had multiple views open and you tapped a new file, an already running instance of that view of that app, a view of that app would come up on the display. So I have a small simulation app running here that will try to mimic the photos. So this was basically what happened. You open up photos, you had the one view open, you could minimize it, switch away, and next time you were to open something using this app, so I want to open this picture here, it actually brought the running instance to the foreground first before showing the view. which means that your backstack gets kind of messed up. You always see this kind of flickering landing page. In an immersive mode, that kind of made sense. But windowing, in the windowed mode like this, you see it's kind of jarring for the user. So what we did was, I'm going to just show it to you to see what it looks like, because this is, again, something that it's so exciting to see. I know it's a bit geeky to say that, but it really is. So I have an updated version of the file where pretty much the same app. I have my photos viewer, my album. I remove that one and I go to open a new picture. And when I do that, the old view doesn't come up first. So I can activate just the view I actually want. I can tell and can pinpoint in logic from your app which instance to bring up without bringing something to the foreground. And this is something it's not in the bits you will get here today, but it's getting there. It will be in a first flight available after or at RTM. But it gives you the ability to opt into this new activation policy. It's not the default one. The legacy applications, or if you just take 8.1 Surface and do the file activated and create your new views, you will still flip into a landing page view before you can create and show a new view. With the opt-in, though, you disable that policy, and we now allow you to take whatever time you want to find out that view and bring it to the foreground. This, of course, means that for the user to be satisfied with your app, you should probably do this fast. So even though we give you an unlimited time, please try not to. And the view switcher that you used to switch between these views is slightly different than the one that you use for non-activations. So on each activated event args that supports this, you will get an activation view switcher that you can call show standalone views for. There's a couple of more options you can give to it other than just a view ID. You can do things like setting preferred launch sizes and transitions, things like that. But it's pretty much just giving you this option. So if you want to switch between views, you still have to bring something up on the screen in order to switch away from it. And switching is mostly used for already displayed views anyway. So this is more for creating new views. And since I touched a little bit on it just in the beginning, that it kind of makes sense to have this landing page in immersive modes. So we do have fallback UX for the immersive mode, even when you opt into this new activation policy. It means that if you take too long, and is this time too long is somewhere around 0.5 seconds, we will bring back a landing view for the user so that the user know that something is happening. In desktop mode, we have all these kind of needy window blinking things for controlling and telling the user that things are happening. In immersive mode, there's only this one application where they tapped something, so they want a more instant feedback. And this is why we do this fallback. Now, all these types of views, the view switching from within the app where the user taps something and it generates a new view, or in this case where the user double tapped a file or an attachment somewhere and they launched a new view of your application. They all require you to do a lot more work behind the scenes. Since it's created by the app controls the life cycle. So you need to be aware of when the user closed this view and free up the resources, terminate that view if you don't want to use it anymore, or keep it around with like limited resource use if this is something that the user will switch back to more than once. And we acknowledge that this is quite a tax on the developer. It's an advanced use case, but we want to enable users to, or more of your developers to take advantage of this, especially since we're now in a windowed world where the user can have multiple instances of or may want to have multiple instances of your application. So later this year, we're taking this one step further. And we're giving you a shell-activated or shell-driven window creation, where you as a developer say, you know what? Every time the user launches me from the main tile, I want to create a new window. I want to have a new instance of my app. Thank you. And you can do that, or you can say, you know, for tile or for toasts, I want to bring them into my toasts action center. So you always bring them into the same view, reusing a view. And this behaves like the hosted scenarios does today, like share target and the file picker, where Shell creates the view for you, launch you into this experience, and once the user is done with it, it's gone. And the system takes care of that lifetime for you. So there is nothing you need to do more than register for that launch point and do the logic inside that scenario. And you might say, okay, so I register for a launch point. That sounds kind of static, right? It's something you do, you launch, the user expects to do the same thing over and over on that launch point. Well, we are not going to do this through the manifest. This is something we will do dynamically. So on the first launch of your application, since that will always bring up a new window, a new instance, you will register for the launch points you want and the behaviors you want, which gives you the ability to give your users control of how your app behaves on different launch points. For instance, this messaging app where you bring up a new window for each and every toast that comes in, and you bring up new instances. You might give the user the ability to say, you know what? I tick this button, and now I will have all these consolidated into one, and I will always reuse that window. So you can say, dynamically change the behavior for the launch points. I will not show you any code for this today because it's still being worked out, and I don't want to give you any false API surfaces that might change. You know how it is. We work on it and iterate. But I hope that this will enable you to do really cool things with your applications. And of course, it will work across the entire device family. So this is something that will work on both phone, desktop, Xbox, and all the cool things. So that was like one window, multiple windows. The user is actively engaging with your application, and this is where we got more into the actual navigation of part of the talk. How many of you raise your hand if you worked on Windows Phone before? Oh, yeah, quite a lot. Then you probably remember the little button to the lower left, the back button, right? It's been a constant discussion with users and with developers about this button and why we have it there. Well, we're so excited about the back button, and our users are so used to having it that it's now everywhere. We are saying that, as a phone user, if you come from Windows Phone, you should feel at home regardless of what device you pick up. And Windows Phone users are really used to having a back button to navigate back or undo things in their workflow. So this means that we, of course, need to have this across the device family. Now, one way to do it, and I'm pretty sure 10 years ago we would have tried to do it, is to add a back button to your PC, right? Like, there's a back somewhere there, the Microsoft back button, right? Well, we did not go down that path this time. But we do give you an ability to actually add something in your apps, in the title bar, to say, I don't have an in-app UI for going back, and I want to enable the system to provide one for me. We show this in a little bit as well. But that basically gives you a back button on desktop. And even other places in desktop where the user switches into tablet mode, you get a little back button in the lower left corner of your system bar, and that one just out of the box works exactly as on phone. You don't have to do anything extra for that one. And there is just one event, regardless of where that back button comes from. If it's on your Xbox and the press B, if it's on the title bar that you opted into, it's on the phone, it's one event. So you don't have to think about where the user are in order to support the back navigation. So I'm gonna switch over to that one just to show how that works. And helps if I'm on the right PC here as well, right input. Go back to my really beautiful application here. And I have, for this app, opted into showing it in the title bar, which means that when I navigate it inside the app to a new page, I get something up here in the left that is showing up whenever I can go back. And the user can tap this one, and they will be navigating back inside your app. Now, the code behind this is pretty much, hold on. This is it. You have registered for the back event, and you call frame go back whenever that happens. Now, to opt into the actual button is a one-liner as well. It's app back button visibility, and you either show it. If you can go back, you make it visible. Otherwise, you collapse it. We may turn this into a tri-state. Just a heads up that this might change, where you can have a disabled state if you want the user to see that the button is there, but it's not actually active to go back. Now, if I were to run this same app, and I will set a small breakpoint here. If I were to launch my PC into tablet mode, this is going to look horrible because the app is like really small, right? No, I did not. Wrong demo PC. I'm super sorry. I have the wrong version here. It's supposed to be popping up down here, and it doesn't, which means that I'm on the wrong build, unfortunately. And now I seem to have messed up my PC a little bit. There we go. Oh, that's a bummer. So it's supposed to show up down here and give you the exact same event when pressed. You have to trust me on that one. Sorry about that. But it's basically just one event you listen for, and the user is now enabled to navigate back regardless of what you provide inside your app. They can always fall back to that hardware that they're used to. There's a couple of guidelines around this, and I want to stress these because coming from phone, you expect a certain behavior in the app in regards to back. First off is that you always support the back button navigation. Even if you provide in-app backs, you still want the back button on the phone or in tablet mode on the title bar to actually take the user back inside the app. I, as a user, would expect that to work. For windowed mode, the easiest way to have a consistent UI for your user is to opt into the back button in the title bar. It may seem a little strange if you come from a Win32 world to have a outside the app UI for navigating inside your app, but it's quite a good fallback if you don't want to do the logic of finding out whether you're on a windowed mode or if you're on a phone and whether you should provide in-app UI to go back or not. And last but not least, and this is really important, it's to not strand users in your app. So the global back button, which is the one you see on phone and the one you see in tablet mode, means that the user can navigate between apps in their back stack. So when they're inside your app and they press back, and you can no longer go back inside your app, the user will transition to wherever they were before they got into your app. If you were to hog that, they would stick in your app. And of course, we want them to stay in our apps, right? Spend as much time as possible, but please, respect that global back button. So we touched about windowing, about back, about how the user navigates inside your app. And I'm just going to quickly run through a couple of the universal building blocks that builds up the navigation model. Not going to spend much time on these. We have the same frame and page controllers as we did in 8.1. We have the same navigation API for navigating to new pages inside your app. The same back stack you can inspect, the same forward stack you can inspect as well, and of course add pages too as you move along or remove pages from the back stack as you navigate back and forth. Each entry is still the same page stack entry. It's your page type, it's your parameters, and it's the navigation transition inside your application. And you still, and I know if you come from Silverlight 8.1 or Silverlight in general, this is kind of a letdown, but you have to save and restore your own navigation journal in the Windows Universal Platform. I'm hoping to change this as we go along, but right now you still have to get your navigation state, which returns the string that you have to save down, and then later restore in order for the user to get back into an app that has the same state as they were in when they left off. Having talked about that touched about those pages, page caching is something that comes up, and I get a lot of questions about even from internal developers, because the behavior in 8.1, so we're sticking to this behavior for now, is first off, your pages are not cached by default. So whenever you navigate to a page, a new instance is created and everything is redrawn. So you have to think about what pages you want to cache in your application. You have to pay attention to size limits. I know if you've been working on desktop, you're probably like, hey, 16 gigs of RAM, I don't have to care, right? Well, on phone, 512 megs of RAM, we keep a pretty tight chip when it comes to how much memory you get to your device. So you need to really think about how many pages or what pages need to be cached inside your application. And also, the cache is a bit special in and of itself. When we say that you cache pages, that's not really 100% accurate, because we cache page types. So if you reuse page types, you will get cached instances whenever you navigate to that page type, which means that if you have dynamic data on a page, you cache that page type, say inventory page, and then you reuse that inventory page later, and it was cached. The user will see stale content before you have time to refresh that and display new content. So this, I know it's a bit of a different caching technique, but this is what we have, and so keep that in mind. Having said that, though, there are some pages that you want to always cache, like the top-level page of your application, which the user wants to return to quickly. You should always get like a snappy feel when you go home in your application. And you can set those to required, which means that they will not count towards the cache size. So even if you have a cache size 1, you set required on your main page, you can still have one more page cached. And these are the same APIs as in 8.1. So it's the frame cache size and page navigation cache mode. And the navigation cache mode has to be set in the page constructor. You can't change it later on inside the same instance of that page. Other universal blocks are the love and hate relationship with splash screens. We all kind of rely on them to be there when we take time to load our app, and the user kind of wants them to go away because it means just another couple of milliseconds waiting for your apps to come up. Well, it's universal, so we have the same asset on all devices. We still have the same manifest entries, nothing changed there. You can set the background color that is used to fill the rest of the window that the splash screen is shown on. We now support the extended splash screen APIs throughout the platform, which means that you can make transitions, seamless transitions from a splash screen into a app-drawn splash screen when you have complex init, or when you want to automatically log in the user, take contacts up to the server side, which you don't know how long they will take. So it gives you a way to do a seamless transition into giving the user feedback about initiation happening. And if you come from phone, you expect the next one. And I'm happy to say that this is also for the rest of the world, all of our devices and all of our form factors. You don't have to provide an asset. You can choose not to have a splash screen. I would take note, though, and opt out only after verifying the user experience across the device family that you are intending to support with your application. Because fast loading apps, not a problem. App content will just appear, the user will be happy, and that's it. But for slow loading, Shell, or I would say the Windows, will show us something to the user while that app is being brought up. So it could be like the marching ants you see on phone, the loading, ... Or they can fall back to showing your main tile as a splash screen if it takes more than half a second or thereabouts. So these are all the building blocks, these are all the windowing, these are all the goodness for bringing an app on screen. But sometimes though, that app does not remain on the user's focus. And I mean, we would, again, like them to be there all the time, being only in your app, having 100% attention to you. But there will be suspending and resuming of your app happening. You will be navigated away from. And across the Windows 10 device family, we do the same thing as we did in 8.1. We are setting fast application resume as the launch policy for applications, which means that relaunching an app will reuse the suspended app instance. So it will be a fast return to your application for the user. This means that on suspension, though, that when you suspend, you need to save and state the navigation journal, timestamps, all this, in order to be able to bring the user back on resume. So when we resume with this fast app resume, it's not always that the user want to get back to exactly where they were. It depends on where what happened to the app before it got suspended. So whenever you return, you need to check the previous execution state, and this timestamp I was talking about a little bit as well, and basically make a decision tree. If it was closed by user, or if it was not running, or hey, the user hasn't actually used your app in, I don't know, a day, you may not want to return them to where they came from. You might want to start fresh, especially closed by user, since that is they intentionally closed your app. Something went wrong and they wanted to restart it fresh. If you return from suspended, though, you just resume from wherever you were. Nothing to do, really. And the terminated state is kind of where this last piece of the puzzle comes in, and that's when PLM, or the Process Lifetime Manager, has decided that the user were doing other things with the system and we needed the resources to display something else. So we suspended and terminated you. And you wanted to restore the navigation journal and resume when you come back. Now, we talked about multi-view applications here before, and they are a little bit special when it comes to suspending and resuming. And this is something you need to keep in mind when you design such applications. Because on suspension, we will not suspend each view individually. All the secondary views will be deleted, like destroyed from the system. They will be closed. And your main view will be the one that has to take care of saving, restoring state for all the views you want to be able to reconstruct on resume. So on the resume, you need to provide in-app UI to restore those views. So you, again, need to take care of all this lifecycle management of your views and of your app. And it's pretty tempting to go, the user had 20 pictures open, my app got suspended, and I get back and I pop 20 windows, because that's what I had when I was suspended, right? I ask you not to do that. At least ask the user before doing things like that. Provide an in-app UI for saying, restore all my views, or restore this view or that view. So that you don't just push content onto the user. It could be very, very jarring. I know we're running out of a lot of time, and I anticipated this. I did a talk last year, which was way more focused on the different transition points where you came from, like toast launching, tiles, secondary tiles, suspend, resume, all this. Go watch that. It's pretty much the last 30 minutes of that talk, I'd say, because they all are the same patterns we want to see in Windows 10. With that said, though, we did one change, and this is when you have been terminated. In 8.1, when the user relaunched you, you had no real way of telling where that relaunch was happening from. So if you were relaunched from a switch or the user backed into your app, versus if the user tapped the main tile, you couldn't really tell that difference. But it could mean such different things to the user. Going back inside your app is basically just returning to wherever they were, while launching from the main tile may be, hey, I want to start a new session. Well, we now can do this, because on terminated, when you come back and see that you have been terminated before, you can check the tile ID, and it's now an empty string if you come from a back navigation or a switch. So this is your way of saying, the user saying that I returned by a navigation, I did not return by a launch. And of course, if you return via a live tile or main tile or secondary tile, that tile ID would be populated as with any other launch. So I'm going to wrap up a little bit quickly here and summarize a little bit what we've been talking about. We always want you to resume your app to the user. That is kind of our entire intention with the Fast App Resume. We want you to support the global back button and take the user back to where they came from when they press that in the when they navigate away from your application, basically. You can no longer rely on set window sizes. You have to listen to the size change and redraw your UI. And you need to take care when restoring secondary views. Don't just randomly restore them all. Make the user select what views to restore. As a developer, well, it's the same page navigation across all our devices. Remember Fast App Resume. That's key to our entire message, our entire platform. We want it to be fast whenever the user relaunches you. So don't clean up your state every time. Always opt in for the back button. And always resize your application. There's a couple of talks later today. My manager is somewhere in here, I think, is having a talk about tiles and stuff. These are cool things to make your app pop more in terms of user interaction. Even later today, one of my colleagues is having a talk about the web of apps, or how you can make app services to connect apps between each others. And there is a couple of other talks that happened previous days, in order to give you a feel about the dynamic sizing of views. So with that, I want to thank you, and please go do epic stuff with this. I will be available for questions and answers, either if you come up here, or I will be in the Windows Lounge after this as well. So.